I don't know if I know enough about this case, but like all the things I was reading about the brother-in-law and that kind of stuff, I'm like, oh,
We did a whole like episode in our fan club where I was like, you guys, there's like weird stuff happening in the background.
One word. That is all it took. One word from one woman, spoken into a microphone on a Tuesday afternoon, and suddenly more than 300 million people were paying attention to a case that law enforcement has not been able to crack in over 110 days. The word was OOF. And it came from someone who has never attended a press conference, never processed a crime scene, never sat across from a federal investigator in a windowless room. She is not a detective. She is not a profiler. She is not a retired agent with decades of case files behind her. She is Khloe Kardashian. And what she said on May 13, 2026, on her podcast Khloe in Wonderland, sitting across from Ashley Flowers of Crime Junkie, changed the temperature of this entire investigation. Not because celebrities solve cases. They do not. But because of what she said. And who she said it about. And the fact that she said it to an audience the size of an entire country. Before getting to that word, before unpacking exactly what Khloe said and why it matters, there is something that needs to be established first. Because the Kardashian moment did not happen in a vacuum. It landed on top of a case that has already been quietly building toward something. 3 separate voices, 3 completely different backgrounds, 3 people who have never been in the same room together, all pointed in the same direction this week.
3 voices said it this week. 3 completely different people, from 3 completely different directions, and every single one of them pointed toward the same place.
Not toward the masked figure everyone has been watching on that doorbell camera. Somewhere else entirely. Hi viewers. Here is a quick question before going any further. Did you first hear about the Nancy Guthrie case through social media or through a news channel? Drop your answer in the comments right now. That question matters here. Because the way this story is traveling, the path it is taking from investigative reports to FBI statements to a celebrity podcast with 300 million listeners, that path is unusual. It is telling. And it connects directly to why this case has not gone cold despite 110 days without an arrest, without a confirmed suspect, without a single person stepping forward to claim $1,200,000 in reward money. Think about that number for a moment. $1,200,000. Sitting there. Unclaimed. In a world where people turn in their neighbors for far less, nobody has come forward. Nobody has made that call. Nobody has collected. There is a reason for that. And it will be returned to. But first, Nancy. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the anchor of NBC's Today Show, one of the most recognizable faces in American morning television. Nancy is a woman of deep faith. She attended a small group church service every single Sunday. She was known by the people who loved her as someone who showed up, who called, who arrived on time. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy had dinner at the home of her daughter Annie and Annie's husband, Tommaso Ciani, in Tucson, Arizona. It was an ordinary evening by every visible measure. Family, food, the end of a weekend. Tommaso drove her home. The garage door at Nancy's house closed at 9:50 in the evening. That was the last ordinary moment. At 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera at Nancy's home was disabled by a masked individual who appeared on the footage. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from her phone. The device inside her chest that had been quietly logging every heartbeat, every breath, every moment of her life, went silent on the network. The 911 call came in at 12:03 p.m. the following day, February 1st. That call remained sealed. By the time investigators arrived, by the time the scene was processed, by the time the questions started being asked, Nancy Guthrie was gone. And the blood found on her front porch confirmed that whatever happened in those dark hours was not peaceful. Her blood was there. And so was someone else's. An unknown DNA profile was recovered from that same porch. That profile was run through CODIS, the national DNA database used by every law enforcement agency in the country. It came back with no match. No prior arrests. No prior convictions. No criminal history of any kind attached to that genetic material. Whoever was on that porch had never been caught before.
The ransom notes going to all the media outlets
TMZ,
first.
I know.
How weird was that?
I know.
It's so much. And I can't understand that in 2026, there's not, like you said, I don't believe that there's not one piece of information. They're not telling
They're
us.
not telling us,
Yeah.
which is like so common with law enforcement, right?
Now back to Khloe Kardashian. Because the word OF is only the beginning of what she said. On May 13th, 2026, Khloe sat down on her own podcast and began talking about the Nancy Guthrie case with Ashley Flowers, the host of Crime Junkie, one of the most widely listened to true crime podcasts in America. Khloe said, and these are her verified words, that she found it mind-blowing that in 2026 an 84-year-old woman could disappear with the world watching and nobody knows anything. Then she said something specific. She said she had been reading about the brother-in-law and that kind of stuff. And she said OOF. Then she said something else. She said the ransom notes went to media outlets first. And she said she did not believe that there was not one piece of information investigators were not telling the public. Read that again slowly. Ransom note sent to media before law enforcement. A brother-in-law she felt compelled to say OOF about. And a belief, stated plainly and publicly, that the full picture of this investigation has not been shared. That is not tabloid noise. That is a sequence of specific, pointed observations made to an audience of 300 million people who had, many of them, never once heard the name Nancy Guthrie before that podcast played through their speakers. 300 million. That number is larger than the entire population of the United States. It includes people who do not follow true crime. People who have never watched an investigative documentary. People who follow Khloe for fashion, for family content, for entertainment. And now those people know about Nancy. Now those people know about the brother-in-law. Now those people know that the ransom notes went somewhere unusual before they went to the people who were supposed to receive them. That changes something. Not the evidence. Evidence is what it is, and it lives in a laboratory at Quantico, Virginia right now, being worked by scientists who do not care about podcast audiences. But pressure changes things. Witnesses change their minds when a case stays visible. People sitting on information get uncomfortable when the story will not go away. Tips come in from unexpected places when 300 million people suddenly know a name. Celebrity reach does not solve cases. But it keeps cases alive. And this case needs to stay alive. Because somewhere out there, inside a database holding more than 50,000 tips, a former detective who once cracked one of the most terrifying crime sprees in Tucson's history says the name of the person who took Nancy Guthrie is already written down. It is already there. Buried. Waiting. And that is only the first of 3 things that came to light this week that should make every single person following this case stop completely and rethink everything they thought they knew about who took Nancy Guthrie, and why the man on that doorbell camera may not be the person investigators are truly watching. Everyone has been watching the wrong person. That is not a theory. That is the assessment of a former FBI special agent with years of experience inside one of the most sophisticated law enforcement organizations on the planet.
As we work with so many families, like we're not just telling these stories, we're working with law enforcement, we're working with families, and it is wild how they are going through the most traumatic experience of their life. There's no resolution. There's this
Her name is Jennifer Corfindafer. And what she said publicly on May 19th, 2026, cut through every layer of noise surrounding this. One investigator's find. He said it is not likely. He said if investigators found 1 hair, there are probably 10 more. 10. Not one piece of trace evidence. A full forensic picture that has never been disclosed to the public. Fingerprints. Skin cells. Microscopic fibers. Additional hair strands. Material transferred from the person who entered that home onto Nancy's furniture, her floors, her belongings. material that left with them and was potentially recovered somewhere else entirely, miles from that porch, in ways that have never been mentioned in a single press release. The single hair story is the fraction the public was handed. The reality at Quantico is almost certainly 10 times larger. Moore also addressed the early handling of the crime scene directly and without softening. He said the reported communication breakdowns and the jurisdictional confusion between the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI reflected a clear lack of leadership preparation. He was not criticizing the detectives who showed up and did their work. He was pointing at the decisions made above them. The decisions that resulted in a 4-day delay before the FBI was fully operational. The decisions that sent biological evidence to a private lab in Florida rather than directly to Quantico on night 1, when the FBI had a plane sitting on a runway ready to fly. That plane never took off. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed this publicly. He said on the record, under his own name, on a nationally broadcast platform, that the Pima County Sheriff's Department did not work well with the FBI during the critical early days of this investigation. He said he had hundreds of agents prepared. He said he had a fixed-wing aircraft ready the night Nancy disappeared. And he said the department sent DNA to a private lab in Florida instead of to his people. Sheriff Chris Nanos told People magazine a different story. He said coordination with the FBI began without delay from the very beginning. He said the aerial search started immediately. Both accounts cannot be fully true. One of the two most senior law enforcement figures connected to this case is not giving the public an accurate picture of what happened during the hours that mattered most. And then came the perjury allegation. Dr. Matthew Hines, vice chair of the Pima County Board of Supervisors, stated publicly that Sheriff Nanos has carried a personal grudge against the FBI dating back to a 2015 to 2016 federal investigation into his own department. That investigation involved the possible misuse of approximately $500,000 in RICO funds. It resulted in the indictment of Nanos' own chief deputy. Hines said directly that Nanos is a person who holds a grudge, that he has remained angry at the FBI for appropriately investigating his office, and that the results of that grudge can be seen in this investigation. When asked whether that alleged grudge may have put elements of the Nancy Guthrie investigation at risk, Hines answered with 2 words. Very possible. It did not end there. The Pima County Board of Supervisors used a rarely invoked territorial-era law to compel Nanos to give sworn testimony under oath. And a deposition from a separate lawsuit revealed that Nanos stated under oath he had never been suspended as a law enforcement officer. Public records from El Paso appear to directly contradict that. Records showing multiple suspensions and a resignation submitted in lieu of termination. The sitting sheriff overseeing an active federal investigation into the disappearance of an 84-year-old woman may have committed perjury. That is the institution. That is the internal condition of the department responsible for finding Nancy Guthrie. And yet the work continues. Because underneath the institutional dysfunction, inside a federal laboratory in Virginia, the science does not take sides and it does not hold grudges. Genetic genealogy is not a quick process. It is slow, careful, and methodical. It works by comparing DNA recovered from a crime scene against commercial ancestry databases, building a family tree in reverse, generation by generation, branch by branch, until a living person emerges at the end of that tree as the most probable source of that genetic material. It is the same technology that identified the Golden State Killer after more than 4 decades of silence. The same technology that led to the conviction of Rex Heuermann, the Long Island serial killer. It has never permanently failed when applied to quality biological evidence. If the hair sample recovered from inside Nancy's home contains a root, which is what determines whether full genomic profiling is possible, then the person who left it is already inside a database they signed up for voluntarily. Likely years ago. Likely thinking nothing of it. A family history search. A curiosity about ancestry. And the clock on their anonymity is already running. Sheriff Nanos, despite everything, said something in May 2026 that carries weight regardless of the source. He said investigators believe they are getting closer to identifying the unknown DNA contributor. He said an arrest will be made. And he described exactly what happens the moment a DNA match is confirmed. Investigators go backward. What does this person drive? Were vehicles matching the description seen near Nancy's neighborhood? Who do they know? Where were they on the night of January 31st going into February 1st? The DNA does not negotiate. It does not have a version of events. It either matches a name or it does not. Now to the voice that cut through everything else this week. Robbie Meyer is not a cable news commentator. He is not someone who follows cases from a distance and offers opinions. He is a former detective from the Pima County Sheriff's Department, the same department running this investigation, who worked inside the building, who knows how those cases move, and who has broken one of the most terrifying crime sprees in Tucson's recorded history. Between 1983 and 1986, a man known as the Primetime Rapist conducted more than 30 home invasions across Tucson. He targeted more than 90 victims. He entered homes. He terrorized families. And for years, despite thousands of tips pouring in from every direction, he was not caught. The case seemed like it might never close. Robbie Meyer was part of the team that broke it. Not through a single dramatic forensic breakthrough. Not through a confession. Through the slow, grinding work of processing a mountain of human information until one connection surfaced that linked a name to the crime. A human thread buried inside a pile of tips that took time and patience and the right person asking the right question to pull loose. On May 22, 2026, Meyer looked at the Nancy Guthrie case, at 50,000 tips and counting, and he said something that should stop every person following this investigation cold. He said he believes the suspect's name is already in those 50,000 tips. Already there. Already submitted. Already sitting in a database at the Pima County Sheriff's Office, entered by someone who may not have understood the significance of what they were reporting. A neighbor who noticed an unfamiliar vehicle parked at an unusual hour. A coworker who observed a change in someone's behavior around the time Nancy disappeared. A family member who heard something that made no sense in the moment but might make every kind of sense now. The Primetime Rapist case broke because a connection surfaced between a drug dealer and the suspect. Not because of sophisticated technology. Because of a human link that took time to rise to the surface through thousands of pieces of information. Meyer said this case looks the same. He also said the FBI will ultimately solve it. He praised the thoroughness of the investigators working through those leads. This is not a man speculating. This is a man who has stood in that exact position before, in that exact city, and watched a case that looked impossible eventually break open because the name was always there, waiting to be found. Ed Smart, the father of Elizabeth Smart, who was taken from her Salt Lake City home in 2002 and held for 9 months before being found alive, spoke about this case in April 2026. He chose his words carefully. He said the family has supposedly been cleared. Supposedly. Not definitively. Not conclusively. Supposedly. The word a precise man uses when he is respecting an official position while leaving the door open to the possibility that the official position is not the final word. Jim Clemente, a retired FBI supervisory special agent and profiler who reviewed the doorbell footage, said the mistakes made in this case will directly lead to a capture. Not possibly. Directly. And he pointed to the wrist tattoo visible on the masked figure as the kind of physical identifier that, when combined with a confirmed DNA match, becomes the corroborating evidence that holds up in a federal courtroom beyond any reasonable challenge. Dr. Ann Burgess, one of the most respected criminal profilers in the country, said the spider web has a center. Everything connects. The DNA. The footage. The backpack. The holster. The walkie-talkie. The route the vehicle took away from Nancy's neighborhood. All of it connects back to a single point of origin. A person or a network that set everything in motion. And that center is what the laboratory at Quantico is working toward right now with every tool available to federal science. 3 lanes closing in simultaneously. Genetic genealogy building a family tree from biological material left at the scene. a former detective who has cracked this exact kind of case, saying the name already exists inside 50,000 submitted tips. And a wrist tattoo on camera, a physical identifier sitting in federal evidence, waiting to be matched to a face and a name the moment the DNA work produces a result. And then Khloe Kardashian said OOF to 300 million people and opened a fourth lane. Because those 300 million people include someone. They always do. They include someone who knows something. Someone who heard a name mentioned in a context that felt strange at the time. Someone who noticed something that never made sense until a podcast played through their earbuds on a Tuesday afternoon, and suddenly it did. That is how cases break. Not always in laboratories. Sometimes in living rooms. Sometimes when the right person hears the right detail at the right moment and makes a phone call they had been putting off for weeks. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker inside her chest that was logging every heartbeat until it went silent at 2:28 in the morning on February 1st, 2026. She is a woman of deep faith who never missed a Sunday service, who showed up for the people she loved, who was driven home by her son-in-law on an ordinary January evening and walked through a garage door that closed at 9:50 p.m. and never came back out. Savannah Guthrie posted on Mother's Day this year. She wrote that her family misses Nancy with every breath. That they will never stop looking. That they will never be at peace until she is found. That is a daughter. Carrying something that no professional composure can fully conceal. Going on national television every morning, sitting behind that desk, and holding the weight of a mother who is somewhere out there, who fought back on her own front porch, whose blood and an unknown person's DNA are both sitting in evidence right now, waiting for science and investigation to do what 110 days of searching has not yet completed. The name may already be written down in a file in Tucson. The DNA may already be building a family tree in Quantico. The tattoo may already be sitting in federal records, waiting for the moment when one match confirms what investigators have been working toward since February 1st, 2026. The investigation is being run by an institution facing serious internal questions. And it is still moving forward. Both things are true at the same time. The dysfunction is real. And so is the forensic work happening in a federal laboratory that does not answer to any sheriff, does not carry any grudge, and does not stop. 3 voices pointed in the same direction this week. A celebrity with 300 million listeners. A former FBI agent who called the face of this crime expendable. And a detective who broke Tucson's most terrifying case and said the answer is already in the pile. The only question is who finds it first. And how much longer Nancy has to wait. There is one detail that has not been discussed publicly yet. One piece of this case that connects the ransom notes, the timing of the camera being disabled, and a specific financial trail that investigators have reportedly been following since the early weeks of this investigation. That detail changes the motive picture entirely. And that is exactly where the next video begins.